Chapter 27, A Long Ride in the Dark. We sat in the shade of the trailer and licked our wounds. We were as bad off as we looked, all covered with scratches and festering cactus needles. Welcome to El Norte, Rico said with heavy sarcasm. At least we made it this far. Look around, we're nowhere. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Rico looked at me sourly, but then he calmed down. We tried to think it through about Miguel. I still think they must have put him in jail, I said. If they let him out recently, he's on his way. Who knows what happened? When you come north, nothing can ever be known. What became of Fortino and the three others I started out with from home? Were they robbed? Were they tortured? Are they still in jail? Are they in the States? Did they go home? I know what you mean. Maybe we'll never know. I keep wondering about Julio, my friend I told you about with the inner tube. I wonder if he really made it, or if he might still be trying to get across. What about Torres, the Migra patrolman? Did he die in the helicopter? And what about Jara and Morales? Did they get caught? Did they get away? I think about those things too. I think about how my family is doing. I don't have any idea. Up here, you don't know anything. It stinks. La Pera Flaca stinks. This whole thing stinks. It looks like it's you and me, Mano, whatever happens. You're right about that. At least we have each other. We went back into the store and asked some more questions. The sad woman, whose name was Senora Perez, said that a labor contractor was coming soon, possibly that evening, to pick up workers for the asparagus harvest in the state of Washington. What is asparagus? I asked. If I had a can, I would show you. I've never eaten any myself. It's a green thing that comes out of the ground like a spear without any leaves or anything. Washington sounds good, I said, but Miguel told me to wait here. That would have made sense a month ago. Miguel knows there's no work now. If he shows up, I'll tell him where you have gone. The state of Washington turned out to be a long, long way. The journey took 2 days and the night in between. We traveled in darkness, almost 30, hiding in the back of a big rental truck. It was hot in there, but bearable. We heard the story about some wets who fried to death in the trunk of a car. Stopping for food along the way was too risky. Rico and I had no food. The Mojados gave us this and that from their backpacks. The bathroom stops were few. Side roads the driver knew about, with trees to run behind. In Idaho, I caught a glimpse of endless fields of green. Potatoes, the Mojado said. Do they grow corn here? I asked. Yes, came the answer, but machines do all the work. At the end of the journey, we got out in Daytona, a small town in the eastern part of Washington. A couple hours farther north, we heard, and we would have been in Canada. 5 hours west, we would have seen the ocean. The countryside was beautiful to my eyes, great rolling hills blanketed with weaving wheat, and above them mountains they called the Blues, all covered with trees. On the flat ground between Dayton and Waitsburg, the next town, there was much asparagus to be harvested. The work was hard, and it took skill. You move along the row, reaching down to cut the spears just below the ground with a long-handled knife. Cut too deep and you damage the plant. If they aren't long enough, you leave them for the next day. You have to be fast because you get paid for how much you pick. We were going to be able to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Right from the start, I was making around $60 a day, the same amount Julio Miguel had talked about. $60 a day. Rico was making around $40. Enrique, the labor boss, gave us $50 each to get by on until the first payday, which couldn't arrive too soon. Enrique had a distinguished silver mustache and a limp. I wondered if Rico saw the resemblance to his father. I didn't ask. Enrique told us who to see about fake green cards and social security cards. They'll let you pay later, he said. You'll get by with those. Nobody wants to check up. Just don't think they will fool anyone at the border. Rico and I lived in a dormitory close to the Canary. It was clean and had hot showers. My first. I turned on the cold and stood under it, which gave Rico a good laugh. Then I scalded myself and finally got the idea. There were 2 stores in town with used clothes that people had given away. The clothes cost us so little, they were practically free. The food at the grocery store was expensive, but we never went hungry. Our little notebook, where we kept track of our earnings, told us we were making a lot of money. The asparagus was going to last until the middle of June. Then it would be time to harvest the cherries somewhere else in Washington. After the cherries, we heard there might be a problem finding work for a few weeks. But then the plums would be ripening. Next would come the peaches. Apples would last into October. I found out how lucky we had been to find work in the asparagus. Little would be grown here next year. The cannery was going to close because Americans were buying their canned asparagus from Peru. I was learning all this and more from a friend I made, Pablo Ortega, who had seven kids back in Morelos. Pablo told me about his migrations and those of most of the Mojados I was working with. By the middle of October, they would be leaving for Florida, Arizona, or California to pick oranges, lemons, or grapefruit. For the winter, Pablo himself was going to go someplace near San Francisco to wait in the parking lot of a store called the Home Depot. He would work each day for whatever person drove up and hired him. He might plant trees, build fences, help people move their things from an old house to a new house, whatever they wanted. He said Rico and I could come along. If you were lucky, you can make some good money, but winter wasn't really the best time. Some days, there were 40 men in the parking lot trying to get work and only a few people coming to hire laborers. I told Pablo I would be thinking about it, but I was pretty sure I'd rather work in the orchards. Pablo told me to be careful with the good asparagus money. There would be times when work was scarce and times with no work at all. There would be times I would be paid little and charged a lot to sleep elbow to elbow with other mojados on the floors of trailers. As Rico worked in the asparagus, he didn't say much, to me or to anybody. He had no interest in getting to know the other men. They often sang as they worked and made jokes, but Rico never broke a smile. I tried to encourage him, told him that this was everything we had struggled for. I got nowhere. Whatever he was going through, he didn't want to talk about it. I knew he felt terrible, but I couldn't tell what he was thinking. The last day of May was payday, but by then we'd worked 11 days and had made an astounding amount of money. I was going to be able to send $250 home. $250. The very thought of my mother holding that money order in her hand put me on a mountaintop of happiness. The next time I would be able to send a lot more. Gone was the fear of my family having to leave home, the fear of my mother ever having to beg on the street. No more hunger in our house. Never again if I could help it. That's right, Chewy. Have another helping. New clothes for everyone, and my sisters could start thinking about school. In order to cash our paychecks, Rico and I walked from the dormitory to the main street. Pablo came along to show us how to wire the money. At the IGA, the big grocery store, the lady behind the office counter spoke Spanish. First, she gave me cash for my paycheck. Pablo showed me how to fill out the paperwork. It had to be done very carefully with my mother's 3 names as required. From memory, I printed the exact address of the Western Union in Silao, where she was expecting it. I printed my own name carefully, then the amount I was sending, $250. I handed the paper back to the lady along with the cash. She asked if my mother had an ID to present in Silao. I said that she did. The lady filled out the paper for me to keep and showed me the line with a special number in case there was any problem. $10 more for the transaction, she said. $15 if you want it to arrive today. Otherwise, it will arrive tomorrow. Tomorrow is good, I told her. I don't know when exactly my mother will come for it. I walked away from the counter. My heart was soaring. This had to be the greatest feeling in the world. There's a part of the store where roasting chickens, goes around and around on spits, like on the carts in Mexico. I bought one for Rico and me to share by the river, along with some other things. Pablo was meeting some friends at the pool hall. On the sidewalk outside the store, I waited for Rico. I was still overjoyed at the thought of my mother at the Western Union, the moment she first heard that a money order had arrived, and then when she saw the amount. She would ask them to turn the dollars into pesos. They would hand her around 2,700 pesos. 2,700 pesos. My mother's tears would flow on that money, not only for the amount, but also to know after 11 long weeks I had made it safely across the wire. If only I could see the face of my sisters and my little brother when she brought home the money and the news.